Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Mirror.
You are, your majesty.
Cut the credits. How funny would that be?
Stop chewing on that gum. You look like Mr. Ed.
Alright, so we're going to start off at the beginning. As they say, if you can't say nothing nice.
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
So this is the worst movie that Disney ever made live action. Right under the CGI version of The Lion King. I'm going to tell you this whole story, the original story that Disney told, and then I'm going to tell you everything, really. So let's start off with what y'all actually want to know. Is actually about the Disney Snow White. So it starts off at the white book, like in the original fairy tale. The chipmunk and the birds, they turn the pages, and there's a person that's telling the story. It's actually Dopey. So Dopey does talk in this movie. But let me tell you the story. So it starts off at Snow White in a carriage with her parents. It's a snowstorm, and that's how she got her name as Snow White, because she would survive the snowstorm. The kingdom was very beautiful. It had people being kind, and the whole 9 yards. And one day, her father, her mother, and her were standing by the wishing well, and gave her the locket. The father gave her the locket, said that you're going to be, the person that's going to take over this kingdom one day. Well, one day, the queen gets sick and she dies, and leaves Snow White and the king by themselves. Well, randomly, one day, this beautiful woman, which is Gal Gadot's actress, is called the Queen. In this movie, she's not Regina. She does not have a name by the Queen. That's it, Queen. She enters the kingdom. The king kind of like has an eye for her because she's very beautiful. They decide to get married. They get married, and then after that, the king gets word from the evil queen that there's rebellion against them, or some kind of evil forces or something like that. So the South Kingdom. So South Kingdom, you're thinking Rapunzel, and it's not the South Kingdom, because the ending is not Rapunzel's kingdom from Tangled. It's okay. So anyway, so it says South Kingdom, so the king leaves. Well, actually, it's a trap. The queen has the king killed. So now the queen is ruling, and Snow White goes from a small child to middle-aged. I would say she's 20, but 16, as they say. That's when you get the song, Waiting on a Wish. She's making a wish in the well, well, whatever she's making, about how she needs to be like her father's daughter, needs to be brave, true, and rule with kindness, and then get rid of the evilness. And what she's going to do, just sit here and wait, or she's got to do what she's got to do. That's what basically the song's come out. So after the song cuts off, she looks and she sees this Finn Rider character, a bandit, which actually is Jonathan, and he's stealing the queen's potatoes, because he's hungry, and he's trying to feed out different people, like Robin Hood, where they steal from the rich and give to the poor. He confronts her, and he says, like, look, your kingdom, we haven't seen Snow White in so long, we don't know if she's dead or alive, that kind of thing. And then Snow White was like, she didn't say anything. And so she kind of confronts him like, oh, we once was a good kingdom, blah blah blah. I'm here to fight for the king and do what's right for the kingdom. We need to be kind and generous, blah blah blah. And she was like, well, Snow White was like, oh well, let me just talk to the queen. So then there's a scene where Gal Gadot, the queen, okay, and Snow White, which is Rachel Ziegler, they're sitting down at a table saying, hey, Snow White tells the queen, hey, I used to like have apples and apple orchards, and we used to make pies and give it out to the kingdom, and it's sweet and it's nice. And the queen was like, why? Well, why this? Why that? Why we should do this? Apple is just sweet and it's not gonna last forever. And just this little nitpick. So then they bring in Jonathan because the guards caught Jonathan um, stealing other things other than those potatoes. And Snow White's there, and she tells the queen, we should fair, just, yes, he stole, but we need to rule with fairness and kindness. So the queen was like, okay, don't burn down his house. Let's steal his jacket, steal his whatever, and it's cold outside, so he's gonna freeze to death. So you steal for me, I steal for you. That kind of mindset. So then the queen has him leaving, and then that's when the queen tells Snow White, I didn't know how you'd be so opinionated. And then before she sees the mirror to find out, is this person fairer than me, she goes outside in the courtyard where Jonathan's tied up. And Jonathan is tied up to the gate that enters the kingdom. And she unties him and sets Jonathan loose. She turns around. That's when the queen looks at Snow White and realizes, oh, she's a good person. She freed them, and then so that at that point, the queen realizes that Snow White is becoming of age, and that she might be exactly more fair than her, ruling inside the heart, not beauty. So she goes to the mirror, and this is when you see the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? And then that's when the mirror tells um, the queen that it's actually Snow White, and then that's when she gets the huntsman. This is this normal Disney cartoon story that from then on. That she gets the huntsman. The huntsman gets Snow White. They through an orchard, not like a little flower picking thing like in the cartoon, but it's an orchard because their kingdom is surrounded by orchards, apple trees, and while Snow White was young, the kingdom really flourished on the apples and picking apples and giving it to the poor. So as a memory, the queen tries to be dirty and says, hey, go pick, the apple trees and have the huntsman kill her. Well, like in the movie cartoon where there's a shadow on the wall where you see the huntsman trying to take her life, she turns around and says, oh, you were once a beautiful person, blah, 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 kind of talk him out of it. He is getting talked out of it, and he says, run, go, go, go. Okay, again, the same story. She runs into a dark forest, they scare her away, and that time when she's in the orchard and a little bit of the dark forest, she's wearing her red bob. Before and after this part, for maybe 3 minutes tops, she's not wearing her red bob at all. So after she's in the forest, the bad forest, evil forest, she goes through some bodies of water, and then she lands on some shoreline, and there's a deer, that female deer, that brings her to the seven dwarfs cottage. Again, it's not seven dwarfs, it's not seven mines. They're not saying anything, the name of the dwarfs. You know who they are because of the bed names at this point. Um, so she seems like she's tired, so the animals, Tucker's put her to sleep. She starts to wake up at the same time. After she falls, it goes to the seven dwarfs. Now the seven dwarfs is CGI, they're not live action, and they sing Hi Ho first. Then they say dig, 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 which is opposite than the movie. And then they sing hi ho, from work to home we go. So they only work in the mine. They go to the mine, sing a song, and then they're leaving. So they don't work at all. It's like the people from Oz. I start at 1, I go take an hour for lunch, and then at 2 we're done. That kind of silliness. Well, that's what they do. They go to the mine, they get all the jewels because it's for the queen. The queen loves the diamonds and the jewels, so that's what they're mining. They're mining for the queen. You don't know that. No one tells you that. You just kind of see it in her chamber, but then at the same time you see the same jewels that's in the mine, that's in the chamber of her castle, whatever. So you know that they're mining for her because it's jewels and it lasts a long time, possibly forever. Then a Janet Rose, whatever. So anyway, so after you know that, then it's late at night and Snow White's waking up and the dwarfs are now, that same remembrance when they're walking up the steps and they think Snow White's a ghost or some kind of monster. Well, as they all leave in fear, Dopey grabs the handle and breaks it, and he's in the same room as Snow White. So he gets all like, "Oh, I'm scared, I'm scared." He goes hide, and then Snow White comes out of the bed looking to see what's going on, and sees Dopey with some kind of thing, but it has a face, and Dopey can't talk, and so he's just mouthing off. At the same time, the worst, they barge in, and she turns around. Who you thought he was? Oh, a monster. Well, I'm a girl. Blah blah blah. So it's the same trickery as what there was in the movie. They then go down to the first floor, and Sneezy sneezes and breaks their kitchen table. Um, at the same time, they're kind of like bickering, arguing against each other because they're trying to, you know, convert to each other what's going on, and at the same time they're kind of like having a food fight. Things are just being rambunctious, and a bowl of porridge falls on Dopey's head, and he gets upset because he feels like he's getting picked on. So he goes outside, and then Snow White follows him, and they have like a little. She gives him a pep talk about how to be brave, true, and have courage, and that everything's going to be all right at the very end. So they go back into the house, and Snow White was like, "This house is a mess, let's clean it up." But she helps the dwarfs. She teaches Dopey how to, because he can't talk, how to whistle. I can't whistle. But he teaches Dopey how to whistle. So he starts whistling while they work. So do, 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 that. So then they go, and he goes, "Oh, what is that? That's a magical sound." And all the dwarfs were like, "Oh, I want to learn. I want to learn." So Snow White and Dopey teaches the other dwarfs how to whistle. So they start singing the song, "Whistle While You Work." And then as Snow White's handing things like a sponge, a broom, a mop to each different dwarf, she's teaching them how to sing, how to be happy, how to talk to one another. It's a teaching lesson. It has nothing to do about being woke. It has nothing about women being in the kitchen, about how women need to be like in 1939, how a woman was in the kitchen, cleaning, cooking, being with the children. It has nothing to do with that. It's Snow White. She even had a broom, something in her hand, and she was also working. So they cleaned up the entire cottage. They fixed the table back together, and of course, Dopey's being adorable, and the song, of course, stops, and then she says that I have to do my duty to the kingdom, um, to be queen. I need to get rid of the evil queen. And she's like, I need to leave here. And that's when Doc, the one of the dwarfs, said, "Well, my name is Doc." And then that's when he says all the names of the dwarfs. And then Snow White tries to be A to Z instead of Z to A, naming. She goes back and says everything alphabetical backwards. So it's a little cute little thing. And then she was like, "Can you find me the way to Jonathan the bandits?" Because they kept saying how the bandits are escaping in the woods, and they actually for the king. They're not for the queen, and so they're fighting for the king because they believe that the king is still alive. Snow White's dad, because there's nothing about Snow White's father, the king, being let or dead. They don't know, so they're assuming that the king is still alive. He's just captured and caught. He needs to be released somewhere. So the dwarfs are cute, saying which direction is the way, and they were like the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz, like they were pointing all kinds of different ways. So Snow White says like, okay, I need to go look for these bandits. They're gonna help me save the kingdom from the queen. And at the same time, the dwarfs are going off to work. They Snow White doesn't kiss each one like in the movie. Snow White just looks at Dopey, and Dopey looks at Snow White with a cute little look. Um, his ears perk up, and they kind of like have a little warm little thing going with each other, right? And so Snow White, at that point, they're going off to work. That's the end. You don't see them at another mine. You don't see them anywhere else. That's it. Um, so then Snow White's walking in the woods, okay, further into the woods, and then that's when she comes across Jonathan. Jonathan is hiding behind a tree. He pulls her like around because the guards are coming to look for Snow White from the Queen's orders. So the Queen orders them to capture Snow White and bring her to the castle because she just looked in the mirror and said that Snow White's still alive, that she's not dead. So then that's when she gets the huntsman. The huntsman goes to the dungeon, and then she gets the guards to go out and capture Snow White because she's still alive. So that's spending time. Jonathan is by a tree, and Snow White is being grabbed by Jonathan to hide behind the tree because the queen's men are coming to protect her and hide her. Okay, so after they confront of who they are, they realize who they are. Jonathan takes Snow White to a little area in the woods. He sings a little Prince song that's, "Oh, you're being a princess," blah blah blah. It's kind of a little bouncy. And then at the same time, Jonathan is with the other bandits that are six of them. One of them is a dwarf who is not CGI, and these are all bandits that are escaping from the queen's rage because they believe that the kingdom needs to be fair and true, like the king. So they're here to fight for the king, not the queen. Um, so then that's when Snow White is telling Jonathan, "Well, we gotta save the king. My father's alive. And if nobody saw him dead, then he's alive. He's being captured. The queen this, the queen that." And so they set a set point. Jonathan tells Snow White, "Give me 2 days. Stay here at the cottage." So then to he brings Snow White to the cottage where the seven dwarfs are. The seven dwarfs just got off work, and they're having little love scene where Snow White and Jonathan are kind of getting close, and they're about to kiss, and this whole romance stuff, and the bandits, Jonathan's bandits, and the seven dwarfs are like, ooh, that kind of thing, and then they turn like, "Ooh, you brought him home," that cute little thing. Um, and so they went in agreement. Look, give me 2 days. I'm gonna go ahead and gather people, and we're gonna go up against the queen. Just give me 2 days. I'm gonna be back in 2 days. So Snow White then goes back in the house. Seven dwarfs go. Jonathan leaves with his bandits, and apparently this is a day before or a day before Snow White dies. The uh, the queen turns herself into the witch with the poison apple and walks in the woods, and I guess it would be considered the day of that Jonathan is supposed to come and get her because she's putting things in a bag. The dwarfs leave, and as she's putting things in a bag, she hears a knock on the door, and she thinks it's Jonathan. So she opens it up, but it's not. It's the witch. It's the queen, the old hag with the poison apple and the locket. So the locket that was given from her from the king, giving her a locket to say brave, true, whatever. She has it, kind of persuades her, hey, this is from Jonathan. Jonathan, had this. Jonathan is being captured by the queen, and then has the poison apple, where the apple is supposed to bring her back to her father because of father apple trees and orchards. So now this is all coming together as to why, she's choosing to use the poison apple, and then so she steps out. Snow White's walking out. And as she's walking out, they just, she's confronting her, like, how do you know, my family? How do you know my story? How do you know Jonathan? And then that's when she says, well, Jonathan told me to give you this locket. And, oh, you're Snow White. So here's the apple from your kingdom, your father and mother. Remember the apples and the apple pies and all this stuff, and this is a magical apple, blah blah blah. So she persuades her, and she takes a bite, and as she's dying, the witch, the old hack, whatever we're gonna call this character, says that I tricked your father in going into the woods so I can take his kingdom, and he's dead. And dead just like how you are going to be. And so when she realizes that the queen killed her father and is just killing her, then that's when she just like, and of course she dies. You want an apple, motherfucker? You want an apple? You want an apple? Take a bite. Choke on it. So she takes a bite. Of course, she falls dead, asleep, sleep dead. She's not in a coffin. There's a rock lying like this, and there's some kind of little orchard thing going where she's there. So after she's allegedly dead, all the dwarfs around her. Sun goes down the next day. Jonathan is with the huntsman in the castle because he got captured by the guards, because the guards came in and took him. And he's in the dungeon with the hunter. She's like, oh, I already tried to escape, blah blah. Well, with their strength, they was able to undo themselves, the chain. He walks in the water, and then the huntsman just kind of like makes a thing where, oh, I'm gonna give you time to go. I'm gonna dodge the whatever guard, so he's out and open. So now Snow White is the next day or whatever, and she's lying there, and he goes and he kisses her here, not here, more on the side, like right here, not here, here, because he's gay. So anyway, because he's not gonna kiss a woman, he kisses her like right here, and of course she wakes up, and so then they're all celebrating, blah blah blah. And that's when Jonathan and they all saying, like, we can't let this continue. I have to be saved. I have to save the kingdom. I have to be the father of my father's daughter. I have to be this courageous woman. So she looks up and a snowflake falls on her finger. And then she's remembering who she is, which is Snow White as a snowflake. And then she's going to choose to go up against the queen. So the bandits and the seven dwarfs and Snow White head off to the castle. And then the next scene is when Snow White is entering the kingdom. The castle's off in the distance. And the townspeople are here looking up at her. She puts her thing over her head because I have this that tell you how she did. I'm gonna do a little snippet. I'm gonna do like she did because this was I got this from the movie theater. $20. So this is like that. She go like that. Look, she walk like that. And everybody's like, oh, is that the princess? So yeah, she's hiding her hand like that, like that. She like, I'm Snow Brown. I have a poison apple. Uh, it's Snow White. Whatever. So then she was like, I'm here to save the kingdom. Gather with me. And they start singing the same song in the beginning of the movie, how the fair, all was green, all was fair, all was blah, whatever. And then so the guards come because now she's going up against the castle where the drawbridge is. And the guards is like, oh, that's Snow White, let's capture her. And then the evil queen comes out and says, oh no, this is not um, you're not here for the capture her. She's here for me. She wants to see me. So she gets a magic. So the queen, in front of the townspeople, says, do you want her to rule or you want me to rule? Her is like this willing flower. She creates a flower, it goes away, it goes to dust. It's beautiful at one point, but everything dies, and she pulls out a crystal. But instead of a crystal or a diamond, it's a sword. So she was like, do you want something that's just going to weather away, that's just ugly and not beautiful? Beautiful like me, a drag queen. Oh, you want that? Yeah. But it's a dagger, crystal dagger. And she gives it to Snow White and points it at her and says that you want to just kill me? You want to just get rid of me right now? Just do it. And do it now. We all know she ain't gonna kill nobody. So she's like, no, I'm not gonna kill you, blah, blah, blah. And so she was like, okay. The queen was like, okay. And then she gets a guard to do it. Now, of course, Snow White knows who they are because this kingdom was once hers, her father's. And so she starts naming guards and people who were relating to people in the crowd, like, oh, that's your father. You're a baker just like your father. Y'all love each other. You're a father and son. You have a wife. And just kind of have like this once realistic life that you have other than being with the queen. You have a bakery, you have children, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have things to do. You are a miner, you're mining, you're not a slave to the queen. You're not dark, you're good. And then so she was the guard that was supposed to kill Snow White because he was like, well, you kill her because we want to put it on a show for everybody. So he was like, no. And so in a rage, the queen gets the knife and the dagger, crystal dagger that she made, tried to stab Snow White. And as she's doing it, one of I don't know who he is. They never said his name, but it's the dwarf that's real, not the CGI dwarf. One of the bandits from Jonathan shoots the queen in her arm, and she backs away, and the dagger drops. She gets mad and she goes in and the castle, and Snow White gets kind of upset that she's running off, like, make your battle. And so Snow White was like, you need to leave and never come back. And then that's when the queen gets mad and goes up to her room, whatever room this is, with the face, and says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of them all. And he says that just as long as Snow White's going to be alive, she's always going to be more fair and true because that's how she is within inside. not outside, because beauty is found within, not how you look. Almost like the same phrase as Beauty and the Beast. Um, so she gets mad and says, "Oh, you're lying," and so she takes the staff, or whatever you want to call it, the staff, and she breaks the mirror. And at the same time, Snow White is watching all this going down, and as she smashes the mirror, she turns into dust, powder, and she gets not really sucked in the mirror. She just kind of like just disappears. And Snow White, of course, the mirror comes back together, and it's a regular mirror, and Snow White is there on her old body and looks and sees herself as being the Snow White she is, the woman. And as she turns around, you have the seven dwarfs and the bandits bowing down to her, even Jonathan, and making her the queen. And now this is her queendom. This is her land. You're going to be ruling fair and just and true. Okay? So the next scene, everything is in white. White petals are falling. Everybody, like the seven dwarfs, the seven bandits, all the town people, everybody's in white. Even the buildings are white, and it almost looks like it's a wedding. Snow White's in her regular dress, but everything's white. And then you think it's a wedding, but it's not a wedding. It's just a celebration of being true, fair, and pure, which is white stands for. I'm not saying the word virginity, it just means pure and true. So then they do a little dance, and since the story is being told by Dopey, you can see Dopey open and then closing the book. So you know it's him because he never talks um, until now, because he I understood that he didn't want to talk because everything was dark and never true. So what's the point of talking? So he just told the story of Snow White. And so as he closes the book, he just starts laughing and talking. So you knew it was him that told you the story of Snow White, and that he's able to talk. Um, Snow White and Jonathan does not marry, does not kiss, besides that one little thing to wake her up. So yeah, overall, this movie sucked. Gal Gadot character was herself. Her lines were written very poorly. It's not her fault. Um, you can tell she can act very well. Just her lines and everything was poorly done. There is a Bob, like I said, in the Bob in the middle of the movie, as an evil queen. Um, it sucked because it's not a villain song. It was more like, I'm here and this is what I'm doing. It wasn't nothing to do with the evil plot. Jughead said that this was after or before ranking all. I think he said that this was one before The Lion King, because Lion King was all CGI, and so was this. Because this movie was all done in the studio, all CGI, and it was really horrible. I can tell that Jonathan is gay as an actor himself. Whether or not he is a character in this movie gay, it's unclear. It's the same thing with Prince Fiero in Wicked. You can tell he's gay. Because I got gaydar and I know who's gay and who's not gay. That's obvious. Now whether or not they do something with these men, I don't know. And why are they hiring gay men to play these roles? I don't know either. Um, so let me tell you the original story of the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. Brother Tim Grover tells is where the queen is ruling and Snow White is Snow White. The same story, how there's a huntsman trying to kill her. The only difference is at the end that they that the queen tries to give her a poison comb. They wake her up, give her a belt. They wake her up. The dwarfs wake her up, and then the queen gives her the apple, she dies, and blah blah blah. Now the locket. Well, there was a 1955 German film where there was a prince and that saw Snow White on a balcony, and the hunter got the locket from the prince and gave it to Snow White as a gift, almost like a engagement gift, like you are beautiful, and that tied. Now you see the whole locket thing in this Disney live action. The father gave it to Snow White, but then Snow White gave it to Jonathan to remind him to come save me. At the same time, that's when the queen got it from Jonathan because it was around his neck when they captured him to put him in the dungeon. So that's why the queen had the locket when she gave uh, Snow White the apple. So that's the whole, locket thing. Um, so overall, what was missing was nothing. That whole bow that Snow White didn't have kind of irritated me. Someday My Prince Will Come was not in the movie. With a Smile and a Song was not in the movie. Whistle While You Work and Dig 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 was in the movie. They kind of hinted at the silly song after Jonathan, gets that whole thing away to escape to help Snow White escape. But they should have never put CGI dwarfs. They should have hired live people that are dwarfs like Munchkins and the Wizard of Oz and hired them to do this job. Overall, I should suggest if you're a fan of Snow White, you're gonna see it. I don't even have to tell you. But if you're not and you have children, the children will be like, I want to see it, mommy, then go. If not, wait for it to go on Disney Plus, rent it. If you want to buy it. But that's it. It's not worth seeing in the movie theater. It's not worth going. Snow White, the whole entire movie, is just they could have done a lot better. There's songs in this movie, one, two, three. There's three additional songs. None of them fit for the movie. Even that little dilly bob that, Jonathan sang about bringing a princess, blah blah blah, was just a jig. Gal Gadot could not sing, so that little jig that make her evil, whatever, wasn't even worth it. Overall, this movie's trash. It's I wouldn't even out of 10, I would give it a 2. Out of 100, I would give it a 20. They got the original story, but then they twisted it, and that's why she's not being saved by the prince. It's because it's abandoned. And the whole princess and bandit thing was very much like Tangled, where, she got with him, and then he kind of like bounced around with her, the woods, and it was Tangled and Snow White. That's what it is. And you don't know if that's Finn Rider from Tangled, and then he was going to leave at that point at the end of the movie. He was going to leave, and at the end of the movie, what you call it, sneak credits or whatever, there was nothing there. So don't even try. You don't have to sit there long enough to see it. I did it for you. There's nothing there. So what it used to be was Snow White was going to knock on a cottage door, and then behind her you're going to see the seven dwarfs, and then the camera's going to turn around and see the dwarf elves, which is all their wives. And this was supposed to be an open story, and how it's supposed to be was that the queen's father was a wizard and he was evil, and then she put him into the mirror, and then she became the ruler as she is beginning of the movie. So this was supposed to be a three-part deal, but because Rachel Zegler and her mouth, them putting CGI dwarfs and seven dwarfs bandits instead of seven dwarfs, Jonathan's bandits, and everybody thought that I was with seven dwarfs, this movie went to crap. And you can kind of tell where you think this movie was supposed to be like that, but then since this happened, then they put this in there. So when you're watching the movie, it's almost like what was supposed to be the real movie and what they went with it. So it's actually two movies that's tied in. So you had the seven dwarfs in the original story, but then you had this story kind of twine in, which is where Snow White's meeting the seven bandits, including Jonathan, to help save the kingdom. That kind of intertwine. But Disney's been doing that since Maleficent because they twist everything and add stories and add stuff not to the story. It's cute that Dopey can talk, but other than that, there was nothing shocking. And as a gay man having gaydar, seeing Jonathan like Jack McFarlane on Will and Grace, it's like no, it's not. Oh, Snow White, ew. No, it's not like that. And it's saved by the prince. It's not that saved by the bandit because they're friends. They're not lovers. So one day my prince will come. Yeah, it's because she's not being saved by the prince. She's being saved by a bandit, a bad guy that's ruling for the king, which is her dad, which is basically he's against the queen, which is treason. So that's why he's hiding in the woods, and they kind of fell in love, like Finn Rider did with Rapunzel. How when they were working around, he was trying to protect her, whatever, bringing her to the king, whatever, and he was wanted as a criminal. And they kind of just had a little love story between them. They fell in love with each other. It's the same thing, but that was true love. The original story is true love. This story is friendship. It's like she's Snow White, he's a bandit, and they're good friends, and he saved her from the queen and the guards so she won't get captured and killed, and then he helped her get back to kingdom, blah blah blah. So it's a friendship kiss. So it's like two soulmates that are not in love for marriage, but our relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend, it's more best friends, soulmates that kiss. And then instead of true love's kiss, it's really true love, just like Anna and Elsa. So Elsa was frozen, Anna was frozen, and then Elsa did whatever she did for true love's kiss. And that's the same way as this. Oh, and like Maleficent, how Maleficent kissed Aurora to wake up the spell, to break the spell, instead of True Love's Kiss, which is the Prince Philip. So it's the same way, it works the same way as Jonathan is a friend or soulmate, first True Love's Kiss to Snow White. And that's how she woke up. Anyway, we went to Cinepolis, and for $21, you can get the Snow White cape. One side is her dress on the cape, and the other side is the red cape when she walked back into the kingdom after being poisoned by the thing, like I did the skit. My acting skills are better than any acting skills that these people had in the movie. So you're gonna like my acting skills. Snow White. I could have done a lot better job playing Jonathan. They should have hired me